Good afternoon, everybody. Justin Henderson, aka Hendo, here with RecruitMilitary and the December episode of Vetonomics. I have to tell you, this is maybe my favorite episode of the year. I'm really excited. One, the jobs report was more robust than I think really anybody expected. Excited to jump into that for 5 or 7 minutes. But really why I'm so excited about this episode is I have my good friend, Steve Baker, on the show. Steve and I met in 2015 while he was transitioning out of the Marine Corps. And I was lucky enough to assist him in that transition. And Steve and I, as Marines do, stayed in contact ever since and became friends. And what's really funny is we became friends, like probably a lot of you have, digital friends, where we spoke on the phone, we did video conversations, but we never were in the same room together until about 3 weeks ago. He got a new job, ended up coming up to Boston where I live. We're able to actually grab dinner together and have a good conversation. And out of that time hanging out came this episode. So I'm really excited to have Steve on to talk about his transition and a landmine or two that he stepped on, but luckily didn't get blown up on as he transitioned out. And he's just had an amazing civilian career. So I really want everybody that's looking for jobs as veteran career seeking people to really hear his story. So excited for that. But first, let's just jump into the jobs report, jump through the numbers real quick. You know, what stands out again is the unemployment rate. You know, the unemployment rate has gone down both nationally and veteran. National's gone down from 3.839 to 3.7. So we've gone from 6.5 million job seekers out there to 6.2. So we've lost about 300,000 total. And then the veteran unemployment rate is 2.8. And anybody that's been following that, I had a graph 6-8 months ago about veteran unemployment compared to national. And it's really interesting. And in times of strife, veteran unemployment just drops a full point below national. So, you know, coming out of World War II, World War I, any times like COVID, we dropped a full point below. During COVID, it was veteran unemployment was hovering between 2.4 and 2.8%. It's back to 2.8% this month. There was a blimp where it jumped above 3 for 3 or 4 months, but it's back down again. But again, it's just showing you in such a tight labor market where, you know, you have to do more with less. We're really good at that. And when you have this tight labor market, we'll jump into this when we look at the LinkedIn veteran work opportunity report. But when you get this tight of a labor market, what happens is the experience part of the interview system isn't quite as heavily weighed as a human side of, hey, are you a high performer? Can you do these things? Can you learn? Can you grow? And in a market like we're in right now, it's really, really, really good for that transitioning veteran to find the right job. It's really good. So let's jump through the next part. So what's really good is the monthly numbers, what we expected. I was thinking, if you follow Vetonomics, the page, I posted the ADP report that comes out the Wednesday before this job report comes out. And they're sometimes close and sometimes they're way off. The prediction was 100,000 jobs and we doubled that. So it's pretty wild to see that we're continuing to grow like this. And you can see the economy, how it's just chugging along. From a Fed standpoint, you're hoping that, you know, maybe it was 100 so that they could lower interest rates. At 199, that makes that decision pretty hard. I haven't been following the market today, but I'm sure the market is going to be a little softer than normal, just under that news, working on CDs and what long-term interest rates are looking for. But yeah, Sean, if you could go to that next slide, thank you. What's interesting too is what people don't realize is, you know, unemployment rate are those people looking for work that haven't found jobs. And the long-term unemployed, those that have been jobless for more than 26 weeks, has been hovering around that 20% for a long time. 19.8, it was at 20.3 and slowly going down. But between last month and this month, we had a 1.5% drop in long-term unemployment. So that really shows you that kind of that crack of that, hey, corporate America is seeing different ways to value job seekers and finding opportunities for people that maybe couldn't find the right spot for themselves in the market. And so that's a good thing. To kind of give you that idea, is the prime age labor force participation rate, those 18 to 54 years old, kind of the majority of the workforce, we're at 83.3%. That is about as high as you're going to get. So we're really beyond pre-COVID numbers. It's things just red hot. Stating that pre-COVID to where we are now, there's almost 5 million more citizens employed than there were pre-COVID. So we had 152.4 million people employed when COVID touched our shores, and right now we're at 157.1 million. So it's a red hot market that just continues to grow. In the supply demand is still there. If people are wondering, hey, is the market soft? There are 2.23 million more job openings than there are job seekers. So the supply demand, the job seeker still has the high ground in this market. And wondering who hired in November, healthcare just continues to just grow, and they were the winner this whole year. When you look at long-term employment trends, government has added another 49,000, which over the last couple months we've seen some really large growth there. Manufacturing added another 28,000, but that's mostly, there were 30,000 people on the automobile strikes and the labor strikes around the country. There's about 30,000 people on strike. So they all returned. So that's a little misleading. That 28,000, I kind of say it's a wash, that the people that were on strike came back. Leisure and hospitality continues to grow. I think that's around the holiday season. The January report will say that there was a bunch of hires in December because of the holiday season. But what's interesting is that retail lost 38,000. You wouldn't expect that in November. Maybe it's just a blip, and that the December report will show a huge hire there, 50, 80,000, because of just this push of the holidays. But really interesting to see where it goes. And then again, like we said, kind of breaking this down in a graphic of really who is hiring last month, and you're continuing to see retail, trade. It just blows my mind. I think that bar is going to be totally opposite next month. Manufacturing, like I said, that's a blip, but really the private education, health services, and government seem to be what's been leading us the last 3 or 4 months. What that means is, and IT's even bringing in some, which I know that industry really was hit hard coming out of COVID as we rebalanced the economy, but it's still chugging along. It's just, and there's still openings. We still see openings. It's just, they're becoming a little bit more specific on their demands, hiring authorities. They're just being a little bit more prudent in their hiring. But that IT side is still growing and still working well. But where we're seeing a lot of our demand is in the manufacturing, the construction fields, actually touching things, turning things, fixing things, which I say often to any hiring authority, the military is really good at breaking and fixing things. And so it's good to see that that's still there. Labor force participation rate. What's really neat here is just to see, what percentage of the U.S. population is working. We're at 62.8, which, if you see, goes right in line. Right before COVID hit, we were at 63.3%. That was the peak. 63.3. We're at 62.8. And if you're wondering why this line keeps going down, that's just what happens in a developed economy. As the workforce ages over time, which we have, you'll get more people retiring. And then also in a developed workforce, developed economy, people are educating longer. It's not just, there's less high school graduates, there's more college graduates, there's more master's degree, PhD. So it's just, people take longer to get into the workforce, and then people have more time after they retire. So that's why you see that number go down. But no matter what, it's still higher than anybody expected. 2018, when economists predicted now, they did not expect us to be at 62.8. Now, what I want to point out too is LinkedIn does a LinkedIn Veteran Work Opportunity Report. They did one in 2019, but they posted a new one a couple weeks ago, and I highly recommend checking it out. I've posted it on my page. my LinkedIn profile, please connect with me. And then also the Vetonomics page that I manage on LinkedIn, I posted this. Please follow that because I post economic data there. Anytime I think that will help you as a job seeker, understand your value in the market, or if you're a hiring authority trying to understand what military experience to target, that's the purpose of that page. But just to give you an idea of our size, we're 7.4% of the US population over 18. We're 5.5% of the US workforce. So we're 8.5 million strong. What's interesting, we're 7.4% of the US populace above 18. We're 43% of the US populace 70 and older. So we're just a healthier group of people, which is kind of cool. So keep doing that PT, everybody. And then as far as what it looks for us on the workforce demographics, this is really interesting. And that's why I put this slide out here is, you're looking at the type of employees and where the mean of us are. And it's really the millennials. Hate to say this, I'm a Gen Xer, but the millennials seem to be taking over the workforce, which is great. And if you follow me on LinkedIn, I posted about kind of the labor revolution I've noticed is there's really three. We had the Industrial Revolution that our grandparents took care of, just keeping us alive through work, no matter how dangerous it was, how many hours they had to work, anything like that. And then we had the Tech Revolution, which technology really helped us to focus on standard of living, which is kind of my generation. We were really focused on standard of living. And then you're noticing the Gen Zs and millennials that, because they don't have to worry about staying alive, grandparents took care of that. Hey, worried about some of the financial sides of it, that they can look at the social revolution and say, hey, I really want to find a job that I can get behind and I have a purpose. And I say that because if you're a hiring authority, you have to be aware of that, of what generation you're interviewing and really what drives them. Somebody like me, I'm so focused on standard of living, mostly for my kids right now, but others youngers may be looking at that social aspect of really what makes them want to get out of bed in the morning and attack their job. But there's that breakdown. Next, please. And then again, here's some quick key findings. I highly recommend that you check out that LinkedIn work opportunity report. But we're 3 times more likely to have a college degree than non-veterans. Our first civilian job is going to have some type of technical background, some type of skill that we bring to the table, not just the DNA of our work ethic and everything else, but that. Then underemployment, it's just something all of us understand that have been out for a while, that most likely you're going to take a step back when you come into your civilian career. And it's just learning the lingo, it's learning the systems, it's kind of going from Apple to PC. But once you get it, we quickly bypass our peers. And that's what they talk about, the retention, 27% less likely the non-veterans to leave their first job within the first 6 months. We make a decision, we're going to stick with it, which is pretty cool, our commitment. But I highly recommend you look at that. All right, now the fun part. So, like I said, I met Steve in 2015 when he was transitioning out of the Marine Corps. He joined in 2006, which is funny, that's when I started here. And he was a cryogenic equipment operator. He attained the rank of Sergeant E5. He was in Cherry Point. He was in Japan. He was in Pendleton. And he really became the SME, the cryogenic subject matter expert. 2015, when he was transitioning out of the military, he was brave enough to entrust us with his career transition. And that's really where we became friends and where everything really started here. What I was really excited about is he started a role about a month ago as the National Strategic Account Manager for Energy Transition for Endress Hauser. So I'm really excited. That was the opportunity. He called me to, he was just so excited at this job, just really proud of, how he's able to attain it. And he mentioned he was coming up to Boston for an event in his first 3 days with the company. And so we were able to go out to dinner and actually meet face to face, which was a blast. So if you could, I'm really excited to bring Steve on camera and start the conversation. I think what is going to be most exciting is, hey, bud, nice haircut.
You too.
No, but seriously, thanks again for, your willingness to put yourself out like this to the community and really talk about what your transition was like, some of the landmines you hovered over but didn't step on, and some lessons learned in your career in corporate America for the last 8 years. So if you could, I did a general overview, but you're going to be much more articulate about it than I am. Well, talk about what you did in the Marine Corps.
Yeah, I don't know that articulate's the word that I would use to, but no, yeah. So I joined the Marines, and again, before I go into all that, thanks for having me on. It was a blast to get together and finally come face to face and get dinner and break bread. And it was amazing. I never once felt for the first time meeting face to face like it was the first time meeting.
I know, right?
It was incredible. It felt like we truly were friends for the last decade. So
yeah, brothers in arms.
But yeah, so I joined the Marines, as you said. It was late 2006, right out of high school. I thought I had the world figured out. I was living in my grandmother's loft and in a bedroom up there, and quickly realized about halfway through summer, when all my friends were talking about leaving to college and all the great things they were going to accomplish, that I had done nothing. And so I walked in. I remember I was sitting in the loft, and I sent the Marines. I knew right off the hand, I had wrestled in high school a bit, and just growing up the way that I was raised, if I was going to join the military, and I had several, veterans and lineage. My grandfather, my great grandfathers had all served, and none of them had joined the Marines yet. And I was like, well, that's the branch that I want to go to. It had already had the reputation for being the toughest and the baddest, and somewhat out of arrogance, right? I was like, well, that's where I want to belong. And so I'll never forget it. I sent the application thing for info online, and before they could even call me, I walked into the recruiter's office and was like, hey, I want to sign up. And they were just blown away because I met the ASVAB scores I did great on. I met the physical requirements. They were like, this is a dream come true. And I was slated actually. Right. I was supposed to be, I want to say it was with Huey's as either a crew chief or something on the Huey platform, which I was really excited about. And then going through MCT, I get pulled in by this Master Guns, who was the epitome of intimidation at my point in my military career. I was afraid to even walk through the door, let alone to stand in front of him and hear what he had to say. But he told me that I was going to do cryogenics and that I was going to fix refrigerators for the rest of my life, and to get out of his office in some very polite terminology.
Sounds like a Master Guns conversation.
So I did, and immediately my world collapsed. I was like, man, I just had this really amazing opportunity to fly on helicopters and support combat missions and really make an impact. And now I'm going to fix refrigerators. Like, what do I have to do to get out of this? And so the transition happened so quickly. They actually never properly lined up transportation for me to get to my A school. And so one of the MCT instructors threw me in his Jeep and drove me from New Bern, North Carolina, next to Lejeune.
Geiger.
Over to Cherry Point, and had me check into the unit just all on his own. He was some random sergeant, but it was funny.
Adapt and overcome.
Yeah. So immediately I'm getting faced with challenges. And so then I sit down at school, and within the first couple hours, I raised my hand and I was like, hey, where did the refrigerators come in? And everybody kind of looked at me like, what is this idiot talking about? And I found out what cryogenics was in the Marines and how vital it is to mission success. And that, all fixed wing aircraft have to have oxygen and nitrogen support equipment. The pilots, when they go above ceiling height, they go on that bottle, and you're preventing hypoxia and really keeping them engaged in the fight. And so it was really exciting being a part of that. And then as I grew, and I had the first kind of opportunities to realize what the liquid production plant, none of this is outsourced, which I was amazed that there was this level of engineering and chemistry going on in the Marines. It's not something you see on any posters anywhere, I can promise you.
Right.
But it was extremely fascinating, and I took to it very quickly. I was always pretty mechanically inclined, and I enjoyed what I did. I knew what it meant to the overall mission, and it was really rewarding. And I was able to meritoriously promote because I took everything that the Marine threw at me as an opportunity, kind of like that Jocko speech, good. that was my mentality very
Yep.
early on. There was no way I was going to be beaten by anything or anyone, no matter what my job was. And so I excelled in it, and eventually got sent to Japan after I did, several years in Cherry Point. And it's funny, I was stationed in Japan for just over 2 years, and I was actually only on island for maybe 6 months because all of the training evolutions, all of the mini deployments in preparation for war theater, everything that goes on, they send fight squadrons out. Well, they have to have oxygen support, and we have to travel with that gear to make sure that the oxygen is safe for use and that it's being transported correctly. So I had the opportunity, as my rank and qualifications out there, I was the one that traveled with all that gear. So I was really, I was stationed in Japan, like I said, for a couple of years, and I don't think I ever really left the base much when I was home, because I was always worried about the next rotation or the next mini, training exercise. And it allowed me to see the world in a way that I never thought possible. And through all of these, I was picking up, traits that would make me successful later on. And I didn't even realize it.
Mm-hmm.
But being able to immediately drop off a plane into an environment where maybe they don't even speak the language, or the norms are completely different, cultural adversities, just everything that I was being put in the middle of really helped champion my career later on in life. I just didn't realize that it was going on, which now that I look back at is really fun to see. Personally, I've got a trip for work, and I'm taking the family out. We're going to go to Switzerland and Germany and France and some areas over spring break, and my family is thrilled, and as they should be. And it's funny, I was talking with my grandmother the other day about it, and I was like, yeah, I'm not near as excited as the family, I promise you. And she actually reminded me, she was like, sweetie, you've seen so much of the world, and have all these experiences. This is the first time you're getting to do something like this with your family. And I really took for granted, to some degree, just how much the Marine Corps allowed me to see and do, and who it made me. There's absolutely days that go by where I go, the Marines was just something that I did for a portion of time. Those days.
Well, you forget, like, you talk about the operation tempo, ops tempo that we mentioned, it's like you get accustomed to that level of tempo, that it's just your normal speed. But when you go out into corporate America, they go, wow, look at that guy. He's crushing. He's working his butt off. I'm just being me. I don't know what you're talking about. Right? Yeah, I'm not doing anything special, right? And they're like, well, it looks special to us. I had a guy that a veteran that I helped find a job about a year and a half ago. Same thing. I talked to him a couple of weeks ago. He's been promoted twice in less than 2 years. But he said, Justin, I'm not doing anything special. I don't know what's going on. I said, you're just being you. That's like the veteran. He shows up to work every day, knocks it out of the park, doesn't whine, doesn't cry, right? And just moves on and accomplishes the mission. That's great. What also you think too, it's like, I think there's levels of hard, right? And when you push yourself and you keep pushing yourself, that level of hard moves up too. So when you're kind of like, I crack a joke here, my job isn't that hard because I have to squeeze in a workout.
Yeah.
No, your job can't be that hard if you got to squeeze in a workout.
Absolutely. It's funny how relevant that is today, because it happens so frequently that it almost, it becomes something that you overlook. And I see veterans do it all the time. And if I'm walking through a workspace or a maintenance center or wherever I'm at, both personally or professionally, even in an airport, I can spot immediately guys who are getting on a plane, first face-to-face interview, or just somebody who's coming off of a first interview, or just in any of those circumstances. You can see the look on your face, and it's like, I promise you, when you cross this bridge, you're going to be in a position you never thought possible as a result of the tenor that you've put in and the work ethic that you bring to the table. And I'm not saying at all that only veterans bring that to the table. I've met well and above superior civilian side that have never served a day. but the overwhelming majority in terms of workflow management and understanding how to perform to the best of their ability under the utmost pressure is a skill set that we didn't even realize, or at least me personally didn't even realize that I was gaining day in and day out while I was in active duty.
Well, you brought up something about the first interview. And for me, being an enlisted guy myself, I put brass on everybody's shoulders. Everybody I interviewed with was like, I just saw stars. You know?
I remember the first hiring event in Southern California I went to, put on by Bradley Morris. I had to stop myself from reporting into the interview. Like, it was so intimidating. And it's funny because when you tell your story, and the hiring manager will tell us about yourself, and you start to unpack that, they look at you and they're like, on what planet should you be nervous about us? Like,
right,
it's incredible, but you don't realize it at the time because it's such a new theater to operate in, right? It goes from everything being extremely rigid by either on a technical basis or a traditional basis to, hey, we just want to know if this is a good fit. We understand the technical aptitude you bring. We're not concerned there. And it's just the ability to know when to prove yourself and when to allow your worth to speak for itself is something that a lot of people underappreciate.
Well, one, I have a vision for those that don't know about the hiring events he's talking about. They're usually at embassy suites, and you go to a hotel room and knock on the door, and the interview happens in that suite. So reporting in, I just see you banging on that door. Sergeant Baker reporting for interview, sir.
It was, I can't imagine. I'll never forget the look on the first guy's face when I walked in. I mean, I must have, in my head, I was like, hi,
1,000-yard stare.
And then, but in real life, it must have been very similar.
Hello, I'm Steve.
Yeah, exactly.
Purely intense. Well, and I was going to say real quick, as far as the brass side goes, doing this for almost 20 years, what I realized is, one, hiring managers aren't professional interviewers. It's a collateral duty. And I'll tell you, every person you sit in front of, you're hoping is the right person because you don't want to have another interview, right? You're going, man, I hope this is the right human because I don't have to do this again.
No, absolutely.
And once you have that mentality in your head as an interviewee, it kind of relaxes you a little bit. Like, okay, this guy's hoping I'm the right person too because he doesn't want to have to do this anymore. And I'm hoping this is the right job for me because I don't want to do this anymore. And then on HR recruiting side, hey, they're professionals and they understand what they're doing. And a good human resource person, a good recruiter is going to pull out the right information, right? They're going to work with you to get it out. So those are good points. So did the San Diego event, and then after that, you had some follow-on interviews, and then you received an offer from one company, and then that's kind of right when we met. Right.
Exactly. Yeah, I had received an offer, and it was a very competitive package, and I verbally agreed to take the offer. And I had a strange number come across my cell phone, and I thought that must have been somebody asking if I was signing the offer. So I picked up, really excited, and Hendo was on the other end of that line, going, "We need to have a conversation, Steve, because I don't think you're making a decision that's the right one for you." And then we had a great conversation, and the impact that made changed the course of how I view interviews, how I hire, the way that I speak with people in a position of transition, because it really was a moment where I felt like I'm not just a number. I am somebody that these individuals care about and their success moving forward. And it led to a change. I ended up turning that offer down. And you guys were representing both of these firms at the time. So I knew that it put you guys in a precarious place to be, at least in my mind, right? I was like, well, that's not necessarily the place they want to be, for sure. But it really resonated that you still made the decision that was best for me as a candidate, and what led to me. Because I can tell you right now, had I stuck to that original job, I don't think I'd be where I am today, at least not as far ahead as I am personally. Because it would have added a lot more ladder steps.
Well, yeah. And, and the reason that we had that conversation was for the viewers is, you were leveraging your technical skill set as mechanically, electrically minded, but you were leaving out your cryogenics experience. And that really was the value proposition for you coming out of the military. And for anybody watching, I think that's really the lesson I want everybody to know is like, hey, there are things that you can do, but is there anything that makes you unique? Is there anything that makes you kind of step out, which is, I think, counterproductive to us, right? Because the Marine Corps, the military says, no, everybody put on the same cover, same uniform, like let's get as close to the same as possible. And when you're transitioning out, you kind of have that mentality. And, in that conversation we had, was really where I knew from talking to you and your resume, I knew like, hey, no, that's really one where your passion was.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it wasn't turning the wrench. It was the cryogenic side. Like you could do it, but the cryogenics is what you knew inside and out. And I'm really glad that you gave us the opportunity to have you interview with that other company. And then on the Bradley Morris / now RecruitMilitary side, we're military. We understand that, hey, sometimes you have to have difficult conversations to get the mission accomplished. And that's what we did. And that other company, let's face it, I mean, they're better off too, because you wouldn't have been a happy employee long-term. It wouldn't have been a long-term fit. So yeah, in that moment, those conversations may have been stressful or difficult or direct or whatever you want to say, but in the long-term, it was the best outcome for everybody, I think.
Yeah, 100%. That was one of the landmines that I almost had stepped on. It's funny because when you transition out, I can tell you, at least from my experience, going through the separation classes and all that, even then we were hearing, don't speak to your unique specifics necessarily in this term or that fashion. Don't think that that you're special because of what you've done here. You still need to find your competitive edge, and don't, make sure you're painting as broad a stroke as you can with that brush, which all makes sense. It does. However, I was very happy to have, a transition partner that allowed me to take a step back and say, wait a minute, we understand that process, but there's something truly unique about what you've done, and we need to make sure you understand how to market that successfully.
And that's good. With your MOS got you there, and of course, just your drive in that MOS. But, anybody else listening, it could be special projects. You could have been a task for a special project where you learn something unique that makes you stand out. And I highly recommend, if you're transitioning your interview, you really think about that. One other potential landmine I've heard in my time is any type of leadership question, in the interview, because we're taught to be servant leaders. And so they're going to say, hey, Steve, give me a time that you motivated your team to accomplish this. And it's in the singular format. But what do? We respond in the plural. Well, what we did was, and it's because it's against you to brag, right? It's like, hey, don't brag. You're a leader. You don't brag as a leader. And in an interview, I want you to be cognizant of that. If it's a singular question, then you respond in the singular. If it's a plural, what did as a team? Well, then, okay, you respond to the team. So you made it successfully into corporate America. And, what was interesting was what I remember from that first role. So they're a specialty gas manufacturer, international, but, they create these gases. They go into containers. These containers go all over the world. The gases are used. And then I think, wasn't your job to go find those containers? Wasn't there a point where they were like, hey, you go find? So you went from a cryo guy to like the logistics guy, right?
Yeah. So I started as like an asset supervisor, which was really their title to exactly that: figure out the supply chain for raw materials to finished goods and where all these assets kind of sit, so that we don't have any hiccups in the supply chain and we move through production into the end user as seamlessly as possible. And they were looking at me like, yeah, this is a strategic project. We need to make sure, if we're going to spend capital to acquire more of these assets, that we're doing it in the right ways, this and that. And I remember being in a meeting with my executive team and the plant leadership at the time, and they said, yeah, this project's going to be, a 6 to 8 month ongoing evolution. And I was able to categorize and barcode things, and we built systems and programs in place, similar things that I learned when I was in service, just different programming, but the same methodology. And within 6 weeks, I was able to show where every asset in the fleet was. We transitioned the way that the flow of the assets and how they went through each process and when. was really a huge impact that had been overlooked at the time. And so we were able to kind of fix that very quickly. And then the more and more success I had, I was rewarded for it. I was promoted multiple times. They absolutely saw me and appreciated the work that I was doing, but it was pulling me further and further away from the operational, excuse me, and organizational leadership that I wanted more into a logistics and supply chain role. And for me personally, I felt like I was getting further from the end goal. And at the end of the day, I ended up making a transition out of that, but it was a very successful transition. I was able to leverage that so that the program kind of ran aimlessly or smoothly enough that another veteran that I pulled into that organization was able to kind of pick up. He was promoted and took over right where I had left off and did great things once I had left, and took over a suffering facility in the healthcare market with another major player in that space, and was able to kind of again
Still in the
transition
specialty gas space, right? Still leveraging that cryogenics.
Correct. All of it
Yeah.
was rooted in my experience in the cryogenic and plant and production management. And then it kind of, through those two or three things, I always understood one of the things I don't think veterans do well enough, unfortunately, is network and communications.
Mm-hmm.
Building a relationship with people. I love meeting new people. I say I keep my circle small in terms of personal close friends, but I look at every opportunity that I meet somebody as an opportunity to sell myself, because at some point I may need to leverage that into success path, whether it's for me or somebody I know looking for an opportunity. If I can make every opportunity that or interaction that I have a positive one,
Mm-hmm.
people are going to remember that when I come to them and say, hey, I'm looking for this, or I know somebody who fits what you're looking for. And it opens so many doors. And I think that because veterans are taught it's not I, it's us, and that everybody wears the same shade of green or blue, we lose that ability to sell ourselves and just who we are and what we truly are capable of. And I learned very quickly, because I always watched, I knew immediately who the successful players in the organization were, and I did everything I could to mirror their actions until I was able to turn them into my own. And
That's great.
yeah, and it worked, quite frankly, and that's led to ultimately even the job I'm in now. Quite frankly, it was a very large success story. I'm very excited to be in my new role. But before I jump to that, don't be afraid to take risks and gamble on yourself.
Yeah.
I left global enterprise companies to go to a small owned cryogenic hydrogen facility, and I took over the operations and plant management at that facility. And I left all that security, everything with that global enterprise, a public opportunity, because I knew at the end of the day, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to leverage my cryogenic and technical experience into a clean energy market where I feel like is the emerging space. And it was something I was, again, very fired up about. And I took that leap of faith. And after 2 years of managing that facility, we were then bought out, or we were brought into a larger group who is now what I would consider the leading organization for clean energy and hydrogen production in that space.
Wow. Well, so a couple of things you mentioned I want to make sure that the audience is aware of is one, like the networking side. It is critical that you network, especially while you're in uniform. Social media, LinkedIn, I'm a big fan of, and what I find too is the further away you get from uniform, the more you enjoy communicating with those in uniform. You want to give back as much as you can. And you mentioned that, hey, every new person you meet is an opportunity to sell yourself. But, I also say, hey, every new person you meet knows something you don't.
Oh, absolutely.
And you go in with an open mind, you'll be surprised what you find out and what you learn. And so, being open to those new conversations, networking, especially if you can find somebody, your branch of service, your MOS, your, that commonality there. Maybe it's a school you went to. And then also it's an industry. Hey, if there's an industry you're looking to get into, Well, of course, there's veterans working in that industry. Go on LinkedIn, do a search, find the companies, go connect with those people, have conversations. Because what will happen is somebody like Steve, who's familiar with the military and familiar with his industry, is going to help you highlight what experience you have that's really going to stand out in that industry. And I think for veterans like us, right, that's what we want to do. That's the main reason you're on this show today, is to give back and try to, that's what you said, is I want to give everything I know to these people so that I can help anybody they want. And that network, and, we'll drop Steve's, he's been tagged several times for the show. So please connect with him on LinkedIn. He'll do the best he can to communicate back to you. Same with me. But yeah, I think that's the best part, is when you're transitioning, is just be open, and communicate and network, because you never know where it's going to go, right? It can 3-5 years down the road, it can come back and be an asset. So,
if
now,
I had $1 for every time I've told myself I'll never talk to that person, or I'll never have to worry about that event again, I would never have to work again, on the amount of times I've been wrong in saying so.
Yeah, right. You never know what's going to happen in life. Well, now, so you went up the operations chain, which is funny. You got dumped it. You started in logistics, and then said, "Hey, I really want to get back into operations." Got back into operations, moved up the chain of command, and then now you've moved out of operations, pretty much, right? Or what are you doing now?
Yeah, absolutely. So toward the last several months of my former career, I don't want to say that had grown bored, because that's absolutely not the facts. It was extremely exciting, but personally, it wasn't as enjoyable, and I didn't feel like I was growing to the rate that I personally wanted to grow, and the personal goals and development that I had set for myself. And I kind of look holistically at my resume in terms of what I've done from start of service date to where I was at the time, and I said I've got a huge gap in terms of strategic planning and thinking and commercial side of the business and operation. And I wanted to make sure that I bridged that gap. And so I started reaching out to my network and said, hey, I'm interested in a new role. Potentially, it's got to be the right fit. It has to be the right role. Here's kind of what I'm looking for. And I think I sent out about 10 text messages. And within 30 days, I had my new role lined out and was planning to start and transition into that. So I cannot stress the importance of that network. I know that it sounds, if you're watching this and you go, well, Steve just got lucky. It took me 10 years of dedicated work and networking and looking at who I could connect with and learn from and be a part of something. Even if I had to take time out of my personal time to be a part of something that I viewed as greater, it works. I promise you, it helps as you get down. You may not see it today, you may not see it tomorrow, but at some point in your career or your personal life, it will pay off in dividends.
Yeah, knowledge is compounding, right? And you'll never know where it's going to take you. What if, so, you've been in this space, this renewable energy space. So, for those that are interested in transitioning into that space, why are you in there? What are the value points for going into this industry? Is there anything specific that they should know about? Like, is perception reality in the industry?
So
what advice do you have for them?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'll start by saying, and if I've been quoted in other articles and areas saying this before, but I believe it in my core. And Teddy Roosevelt said it. I'm going to butcher it somewhat, but far and away, the greatest prize life has to offer is to work hard at work worth doing. And in my eyes, that correlates verbatim to the energy transition space, whether it's from production or supply chain or strategic account management, logistics, any of it. The energy transition is not just saying we're going to just destroy oil and gas, or we're going to go carbon neutral tomorrow. That's just not reality. Okay. We're going to face those facts. But I play a very crucial role in getting there for my kids or my children's kids at some point in the future. the work I do daily is going to make a better tomorrow at some point
Yeah.
for somebody's tomorrow. And perception is not always reality. I will tell you that firsthand. For those that are interested in the energy transition space, the very first thing I always say is start to do market research. And I don't just mean looking at jobs in that industry. I mean, research the industry as a whole. Get to know who's playing in that space and who the key players are in that space. Because I promise you'll be shocked to see some of the industries that are leveraging energy transition, green hydrogen, and that now there's a spectrum of colors for green or clean energy. But it's definitely, for a while, I considered it the new fad, but it is tomorrow's reality, quite frankly.
Well, so a couple points. What was it? I guess it's winter now. So 3 winters ago, when I remember that cold front came through Texas and Houston was shut down. Was it Houston?
Yep.
And there was only an HEV was the only thing that was open. And it's because it had a hydrogen gas plant. It was the only thing open. And I was like, whoa, that was eye-opening to me. And then on a personal note, I joined the Marine Corps, and 2 of my buddies in my town, one went to the Air Force Academy, one went to the Army. The Army guy ended up being a cybersecurity guy, went into power when he got out. But he taught me about the 5 different grids in the United States and how Texas has its own power grid. And with these storms and everything, it's really stressing that grid. But the number one reason that grid doesn't fail is because the amazing growth of renewable energy inside Texas. And people don't realize that Texas is a leader in renewable energy.
Oh, absolutely.
They just think about it, oil and gas, right?
And now they've announced publicly kind of the start of the hydrogen hubs. And Houston's going to be a huge player in that market space. I'm actually out there in a couple of weeks for a big conference on hydrogen and energy in that space out in Houston. I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, I can't tell you enough. If you're passionate about something, there is a role that you can play as a key and dominant industry player. You've just got to be willing to put in the work to get there. And sometimes that means accepting roles that, will lead to that space, but it's not an immediate leap. Sometimes, go ahead, Hendo.
Well, I was going to say, it's the foundation. Sometimes you've got everything up here that's going to work. You just got to build that quick foundation of industrial knowledge, terminology, whatever it is. And then once you get that foundation, you're going to grow quick. I've seen it so many times that it's like, okay, I just need to, I'm from Pittsburgh. And when I first took this job, I called every steel company I could in Pittsburgh. I wanted to bring veterans back to the Berg to steel. And I remember that they kept interviewing the guys and saying, they're missing, they don't have what we're looking for. And I realized it was a language barrier. And I sent every candidate metallurgy for dummies. It was like a 1-hour course. And the guys would take that and then interview and get the job like crazy,
Oh, yeah.
And it was just something as simple as that. So, I think you're spot on. If you find something you're passionate about, once you get yourself in the door, it's like Marines, man. Once we get in, you can't let us out. You can't get us out. Right?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I lost my train of thought there, but it was just that growth opportunity of, it's something I say all the time. Hollywood does us no favors, right? Everybody thinks, you're military, you're Navy SEAL, you're door kicker, whatever. We're like, that's 3%. That's 3% of the military. There's 97% supporting it. And so I want you to think about that when you think about an industry. If you're a job seeker and go, this industry's this, that's perception. It's not reality. You think about healthcare and you go, doctors, nurses. Well, there's facility techs. There's IT, there's everything behind it. So same with renewable energy. Hey, there is most likely a role for you in there. If that's your passion, that's what you want, there's something there.
It's funny because people don't really understand just how broad, the energy transition space, there isn't an industry that we don't touch. We're in food and bev, we're in life science, we're in major manufacturing, we're in pulp and paper. You can't name, power to the grid, right? There is literally not a single space. You can't go grocery shopping. You can't put fuel in your car. There is nothing in your life that you come into interaction with daily that the energy transition space doesn't play a major factor in. And so you said it perfectly. Don't be the person that pigeonholes yourself into saying, well, this is what I've done for 10 years. There's not a role at this company that does that. I promise you, if you broaden that search, you'll be shocked at how many open positions currently are begging to have somebody like you walk through that door.
Well, and that's where the networking comes in too. You have this vision of what it is, but when you talk to an insider, they go, no, man, you're looking at it wrong. Here you go. Or you send over your resume to a Marine that works in renewable energy, goes, oh man, hold on. Add this, add that, change this. All right, you're good. Now we're going to see the value. That being said, there's one Chrome add-on. So if you're a job seeker and you're looking for work, there's a Chrome add-on that I like. It's called Jobalytics. And what you do is you upload your resume into that add-on. And anytime you go to a job posting, it scans that job posting against your resume and gives you a score. It says, hey, so as a veteran, our terminology doesn't always line up. So that kind of gives you some keywords and some opportunities to kind of improve your resume before you apply. So there's some tricks to the trade there. We're kind of running up on time now. I mean, I could talk to you all day, but I want to make sure we have a few minutes just to close out properly. Any advice that you want to make sure that, if we haven't covered yet, that the veteran job seeker understands, and there's hiring authorities looking too. So any advice for either side of our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. For the job seekers, I would say don't fall victim of your own success. One of the landmines that I potentially would have stepped on had I not had a great team surrounding me and prevented me from doing it is when you run into that success where you just take off like a rocket ship in your career that a lot of veterans see. Don't forget what got you in that position. And don't walk into the room thinking you're the smartest person in it, because people can fall victim to that. Everybody's experienced it at some point in their career. And when you turn into that person, you've lost all credibility. And so when you face challenges, make sure you do so with your team. Continue to lead from the front. It's just a new dynamic. And don't be afraid to adapt to that dynamic. And again, I can't stress enough the networking and communication. I mean, between LinkedIn and my network, whether it was on LinkedIn or in my professional career, has got me through every job opportunity I've ever been able to take advantage of. And then followed up on that, if you're a hiring manager, you're looking for that. If you feel strongly about a candidate and maybe their resume doesn't look better than the ones that you've got in that stack on your table, don't overlook them. Don't be afraid to call out and say, hey, I want to have a conversation with you. Let's not just discuss black and white on the resume. Here's what I read. Here's how I interpreted what you said. Can you validate that's what you were trying to get across, or is this an option, or is that an option? The art of communicating across the table is an art that's going to make your life a lot easier than just sitting in front of somebody right hand. Yes, no, sir.
Well, I think, on that note, what I say is, if that veteran resume comes across your desk, think about if you saw that person in the airport in uniform, right? Would you walk over and shake their hand and say, thank you for your service, and spend 5 minutes talking to them, or two, and then, your bucket's filled. Well, why don't you do that with the person with their resume, right? Just pick up the phone. Hey, Steve, your resume landed on my desk. You don't quite look like a fit, but because you applied and you're a veteran, I just want to give you 5 minutes of my time out. You'd be surprised how many of those are going to turn into a new hire. You talked about, transitioning out and going to one of the Bradley Morris hiring events in San Diego. Well, out of those events, a third of the job offers that were given weren't even advertised before the event. Those people would come in and talk to somebody like you and go, well, hey, I'm here for this job, but oh my gosh, you're a great fit for this job. And so if you're a hiring authority and that resume comes across your desk, okay, maybe that person is the perfect fit for this specific role, but have the conversation. You'd be surprised how many of those veterans are going to turn into new hires. And on the networking side, on the veterans, I mean, that's it. It cannot be overstated, the value of connecting on LinkedIn and communicating with people.
Yeah,
That's great.
absolutely. Just understanding how you're perceived outwardly is crucial, and it's easy to have the mentality that you're going to change the world one step at a time. But I promise you can't do it alone. And making sure that you have a strategy that leads to success. One thing I did early on was I looked at about a year out of my transition. I kept up with all of the leaders that I had before me that were transitioning out, and I'd follow up with them monthly and find out the ones that were successful in transition, and I'd get on a Zoom call or I'd FaceTime and be like, explain everything to me that got you from the time that you retired to the time that you started the new role. Because there's something out there they're doing that you're not aware of. Don't be afraid to continue being that sponge, because it's going to land you in a place that you want to be.
You know, it's funny. There was a meme I saw yesterday on LinkedIn, and it was transitioning veteran and then in-service veteran giving him transition advice. You know, and it's like, no, do it the other way. Like, the transition veteran should be giving you transitioning advice. So that's great.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
And then the self-awareness, you know, that now as a good leader, this is something that you're probably used to, but you know, you really, as some coming out and if you go into a leadership role, you really want to prove yourself and you have that desire to make an impact. But I think what Steve said is really important. You know, 2 ears, 1 mouth. You know, go there, observe, understand the culture, understand the dynamics, understand how decisions are made, how decisions are communicated, and then start to turn that dial and start to influence. Don't be boots on the ground, a hot LZ kind of Marine, right? And go, boom, 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 we're going to do this, because that's not how most of corporate America reacts. And they're not going to react well to that. So that self-awareness and that tactical pause as you understand this new climate and environment you're in before you start leveraging your leadership skills is really important.
Yeah, I tell everybody it's not necessarily difficult to change organizational culture, but it is impossible to do so from outside of it. And so you have to become ingrained in the current culture before you can start driving change.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to be respected, and you've got to be able to communicate in the language that those teammates understand, you know, before you can really influence. No, man, this is great. Well, hey, we're buttoned up against the time, so we're going to end it now. But I just wanted to say thanks again for your willingness to put yourself out here to the team, and I really hope the audience that have watched that you really got something out of this conversation. You know, again, Steve's on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. Please connect with us. Our ultimate goal is to help you find the right career path for yourself so you can leverage that experience, have a positive transition and a positive corporate career. So, hey, Steve, thanks again for everything. And I hope we can get together again soon.
Absolutely, brother. Thank you.